think I may have mentioned it before, I used to get to Manhattan a fair amount, and the reason I went to Manhattan a fair amount was because not only did I like it, but I'm an artist and I was drawing pictures, and I got to do a record album cover. And so one of the record album producers asked me if I would be willing to do a cover for a new group. And I said, let me hear them first. So he pulled her demo tape out, and they were awful. And I thought, there's no way am I going to do a record cover for a group that sounds this bad. He said, no, we're going to work with them. They're going to get better. And of course, because as an artist, a cultivated artist who had his own personal degree of arrogance, I said, no, it was the Eagles.
They got better.
Yeah, they got better. And they didn't call me back and say, how about now? You know, so with our cheery topic today, I want to start us off by saying that I think a lot of us are dying from our fear of death. It's killing us. We spend so much more time being afraid of death than we spend living our life. I've changed my name several times, cut my hair, tried to duck so that it wouldn't see me. You know? Traveling incognito, you know. Is that Bob? No, that's not Bob. Take out that one over there. Yeah. It's a much bigger deal, but because years and years ago when I was 17, I got to meet a hypnotist, and he said, I'm going to teach you everything I can about hypnosis before I die. He was a very old man. And he taught me a great deal, and the first thing he taught me was a past life regression. And so I learned how to do that at 17, and continued to do that at 18, 19, 20, and continued, and eventually used to teach with my wife Judith a certification course for hypnosis. But my favorite thing was to do reincarnation or past life regressions. Nothing can convince you more quickly of how rich you are in history than discovering a person who, in this particular case, was 15 years old, American, very white, who spoke a Mongolian dialect that took us 6 months to trace because it was so rare. Where does that come from? So you could say it comes from the collective unconscious. You could say it comes from past life experience. You could say it comes from shared soul background. You could say it's just plain crazy and I don't want to talk about it. But the truth is, there's hundreds, thousands, and even more than that of cases of people having had past life experiences. And so that means that we're here not only on purpose, but that we're here as part of a continuum of effort, a continuum of energy, expressing itself in everything in every way to fulfill many, many more things than we think we're here to fulfill. I'm particularly reminded of a woman who I was able to take back, and she went back to a life in which she'd been an alcoholic for most of her life, and she was homeless. And she was disliked by nearly everyone because she'd borrowed, begged, and stolen from nearly everybody she knew. And so she was on the street by herself, living on the street, and a young boy was crossing the street, and she saw a truck coming down that he didn't see. And she pushed him out of the way of the truck, and she was hit by the car, or the truck, and killed. The boy survived. The boy later became a chief justice. In the hypnosis, she said, that was what I was here for. For one thing, for that moment in time, to protect one person whose life, if lived, would enrich so many more than I ever could have hoped to have enriched had I lived a different life. That's important because we don't know at what point we're making a difference or with whom we're making a difference. Years ago, I worked in the emergency room, and because I was a mental health counselor, I covered psych. And so when people were suicidal, they would come in to see somebody, or if they were brought in by the police because they were suicidal, I would get to see them. And I saw this 18-year-old boy, and he was definitely depressed. Normally, I would see somebody and I would do an evaluation, what we call a clinical evaluation. When the evaluation was done, I would make a determination whether we were going to keep that person or discharge that person, find some place for that person so they could be safe. I could do that usually in half an hour to 45 minutes. And on a busy night, that's about all I had. And so he came in and I spent 45 minutes with him and I said, you know, I'd like you to hang out for a little while longer and we'll talk some more. I saw a couple of other people, came back and saw him, talked another 40 minutes. I said, I'd like you to stay a little longer. He said, okay. So he stayed a little longer, and I saw a couple of more people, and then I saw him. Through the night, I think he was there for about 7 hours. I had a 12-hour shift. And I met with him 4 or 5 times during that period of time until finally I felt comfortable sending him home. So he went home. That was my day, that was my night, that was the shift that I worked, and I did a good job and all was done. About 2 weeks later, I get a letter from him addressed to the hospital. He said, you saw me, and after 45 minutes I was delighted that I was going to be able to go home and kill myself. But you wouldn't let me go. And after the second time, I was delighted that you had seen me a second time because I learned quite a bit more, but I still plan to go home and kill myself. The third time, I thought, you know, I could kill myself at some other time, and it seemed like you really cared. So I didn't mind waiting for the fourth time. The fourth time, I decided that I wanted to do what you're doing. And that I thought my life could make a difference, just like you were making a difference in my life. So I went home. Thank you so much. That was the end of the letter. I felt good. I had no idea that I was doing that much for a single individual. A year later, I got a letter from him addressed to the hospital asking me if I would attend his graduation. And so I did. And he was graduating from with an associate's degree in psychology from a community college. And I went. I didn't identify myself, but I went. I watched, saw him and recognized him. The time never seemed right for me to go up and greet him, so I didn't. 2 years later, I got another call from him, a letter from him, invited me to his graduation from a baccalaureate program in social work. I couldn't go to that one, but I was able to go to the one that he invited me to again for his master's in social work. We have agreement. So I went to his master's degree, and then I met him. And he said, do you have any idea what happened that day we met? And I said, apparently quite a bit. He said, it changed my life. You see, we're all change agents. We just don't know it. And I think about the tragedy that would have occurred because at his point in life when he wanted to kill himself, neither he nor I could see much to live for. The conditions around him were terrible. The condition of his own mental health was terrible. The odds of his getting better weren't so good. But I saw something that I've seen in so many people. I call it the light. People have a light. And you see that light and you know there's something there. You can't put your hands on it. You can't even describe it. In fact, sometimes it just sounds kind of funny to say, I see the light. But on that day, I saw the light. I've seen it with many of you. When I see that light, I know there's something that you're here for that's important, that's life-changing, that's transformative. But it doesn't stand on stage. It doesn't grab a microphone. It often quietly lives in the background. And suddenly something happens where that person steps forward and everything is changed. I listened to the music today and I was thinking how beautiful it was and how wonderful to hear 3 people doing something together, celebrating in the sky. 3 people doing something together that would have been different had one of them been missing. That would have been different had 2 of them been missing. Each of them could stand on their own, but they stood better together. See, we're standing together in this life, and that makes it more difficult to see how much of a difference we're making because we're making a difference with so many other people. We're making a difference together in combination, in relationship to so many people and so many things. Just like the old alcoholic woman that no one wanted nothing to do with, who changed the lives of many, many people because the Chief Justice was a person in favor of equity, of diversity, of love and caring, when the court wasn't quite designed to be that way. She was a key central figure in changing the world, and I don't know her name. I know her name when I hypnotized her, but I didn't know her name back then. How many lives have you lived in a single moment? How many lives have you lived since this morning when you got up? You're living through all the lives you've ever had. And the point of expression and the point of light is right here and right now. The audacity of any of us to say, I know what's going on, and it's either good or bad. All we can say is, I'm doing the best I can. Let me enter into it with love. Let me enter into it with compassion. Let me enter into it with all that I can and all that I have and all that I am, because life requires that and more. The hero's journey is an interesting journey, because generally when you look at the story of a hero, they seem kind of unqualified for the role. They don't have enough knowledge, enough wisdom, enough background, enough education, enough stamina, enough good health, enough good looks. But what they say is yes when the demand is made and they grow into the experience. What I'm thinking is each of you is growing into your divine hero and to the expression of that divine hero. And some of you are so close to the edge that you don't know whether you're falling into good or you're falling off a cliff. But the truth is you're falling forward into a part of your life that's required, that you have signed a lease for and said yes to. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. You're on the cutting edge of the most spectacular life a human being could live. And they don't care how old you are. And they don't care how broken you are. Get some duct tape. I don't care what's wrong with you. Get super glue. It doesn't make any difference if you're in a wheelchair or you weigh 500 pounds and you've been ugly all of your life. It doesn't make any difference because you're not here for any of those things. And you're not here because of those things. I don't care who said you weren't worth anything. Their commentary on you is worth nothing. What's worth something is what you decide to do right here and now in all of the lives you bring forward to live into that experience. Judith was talking about her childhood experience, and I thought of one. It was, my mother and I were pretty close early on, and we were living in Venice, California. And in Venice, everybody has a garden in the front yard. Lots of flowers. And I loved my mother. I was probably 8 or 9. You know, you love your mom until you get to be a teenager. Then you want nothing to do with them, you know. But at that point, though, I loved her, and she knew it. And I decided that I was going to show my love, and I went down the street with my wagon, my red wagon, and I picked all the flowers I could find from everyone's yard. By the time I got to the house, there were no flowers left on the street. They were all in the wagon, and they were from my mom. And so that was my first felony. Because today, the sum total of those flowers would constitute a felony. At the same time, my mom, she had a funny look on her face when I brought them. She said, "Where did you get these?" I said, she said, "Oh, let's get them announced quickly." Before you get arrested. You know? We're picking the flowers because they're alive and available. And you know, the truth is they don't belong to anybody, they belong to all of us. They didn't blossom for one person or for the yard they were growing in. They blossomed for all of us. This is an enormous garden. This is a treasure chest. This is a wonderful place. And because we're the wonderful people in that wonderful place, we get to play. And I invite you to play. I invite you to step out and make a new story about the new you. Make up a story that in a past life you were a king or a queen or a princess or a doctor or a lawyer or an educator or a joker or a magician or a poet or a writer. And in this life you're traveling incognito. And no one has to know about your greatness, but you have many, many awards. And I want you to walk around having known that you are an award-winning person. Some of you have already had some clues to this. Some of you play a musician or play an instrument and you've had a chance to hear yourself sing. Some of you sitting in the back of the room are artists. I know you. You've already had a chance to play, but we could all play more. Don't disqualify yourself from the life that you could have if you knew how great you were. It's easy to do that. I was doing an art show some years ago. A very well-dressed man who was an executive at Xerox, at that time a big company. And he came to my bin, tie, coat, jacket, nicely polished shoes, looked he went through all my work and he said, you know, I can't even draw a straight line. And I said, you know, I couldn't either for the longest time, so I used a ruler. He said, no, you don't understand. I could not draw a straight line. I said, no, you don't understand. You get a ruler. He said, oh, I never thought of it that way. I said, I know. That's why you're not the artist you could be. Each of us has an artist within. And if you have decided that you can't draw because you can't draw a straight line, get a ruler. Unity, science of mind, the rulers, to help you draw straight lines. To help you draw a line from the place that you don't want to be to the place that you want to be and bring all of you that's possible forward and into that enormous and incredible space. It's really amazing. You're amazing. I'd like each of us to stop dying. I'd like each of us to spend more time living. And when you think about death, smile and say, you know, not today, but because I know it's coming, I need to live more today. How can I live more into today so that the contrast between living and dying is greater? If you're living a life with every day you're rehearsing your death, you're not living. And no wonder you're sad and depressed. You're depressed and sad because you're not living. How could you live? What if, this is really challenging, but what if, like it or not, you're going to be here on this planet, in this body for 150 years? You got no choice. You're stuck with it. What you gonna do? You might, you say, damn, I'm gonna start changing this and stuff. I gotta be around that much longer. Some of us older people say, I got maybe 10, 15 years. I think I can last that long. No, you got another 100 years to go. You better start living, because the living you're doing is the living you need to do for the life you're gonna be stuck with or can treasure for a very long time. Rehearsing for death is a short episode of dying. Rehearsing for life is living. Moving into more life is living. Take yourself off hold, put yourself on live, and watch what happens. And so it is. Thank you.